So we're going to roll right into our next panel presentation, and then we're going to have a coffee break after. I was going to be very adventurous and try on Laura Bell's shoes at lunch to see if I could walk across the room, but I don't think I would have been able to handle that. But nonetheless, please let me introduce our next two panelists. First up, right out of the gate, is Stephanie Howlett. I'm sure she knows everybody in the room, but if you don't know her, she is the fearless warrior. I've got a bio. She is a fearless rainbow warrior, rocks the title of CEO at DiversityNL, a company she's conjured up out of pure fabulousness in 2020. With her cape of inclusivity billowing behind her, she dives into the depths of diversity, equity, armed with a podcast called Be the Change, where she drops truth bombs. You hear that, people? Truth bombs. And serves up witty insights on being an ally, accomplice, and all-around changemaker. I'm not going to read all of it because there's quite a bit, but this is Stephanie. And yes, Queen. Okay, yeah, right. So on the tail end of this, she says, so buckle up, folks, because Steph is here to sprinkle glitter. Mandy, did you hear that? Challenge norms and unleash the power of fabulousness in the workplace. Get ready for a DEIB evolution like you've never seen before. Can I get a yes, Queen? I'd like to introduce Laura Bell. Laura Bell is the founder of Laura Bell Impact Consulting, an anti-racism and DEIB consultancy dedicated to driving transformative change in organizations and communities. Currently, Laura Bell also serves as the host of Rogers TV Out of the Fog show, where she highlights individuals and groups dedicated to fostering inclusivity in Newfoundland and Labrador. She actively collaborates with esteemed organizations such as the Anti-Racism Coalition of Newfoundland and Labrador, the St. John's Status of Women Council, and Happy City St. John's, working to enhance the experiences of marginalized communities in our province. So for the next 45 minutes, we get to hear from Stephanie and Laura Bell on accessibility using an intersectional lens.
I think we're on. Yeah,
we're on. Can we get some music? I know my friend Steven in the back is going to love me because I got him juggling all bunch of things. We need oxygen in the room. Let's turn up the music. Everyone get up. Come on. Oxygen, coffee, whatever it is. Grade 7 dance moves are coming out. Come on, a little bit of stretching. Whatever it is. Come on. Jojo, come on, come lead us. There you go. Jojo's inhaling, exhaling. Like a few stretches, a few back and forths, whatever it is. Let's wake ourselves up. Lunch is kicking in. Have some chocolates, some mints, caffeination, water, right? Everyone awake? Everyone awake? We got it? I got some pro yogas or going yogis in the back. I don't know. They're kind of scaring me. All right, we're all awake. We're all awake. And look at Laura Bell's fantastic shoes. Oh, yeah. Look at those.
Those are not workout shoes.
Alrighty. Thank you for that music. Appreciate it. So when Kathy volunteered us to do this again, she said, Steph and Laura Bell, you're going to talk about accessibility with an intersectional lens. She even gave us the title, by the way. I love it when someone gives me the work to do and the title.
It streamlines it. Makes it so much easier.
Definitely. I guess before we get started, you all have or will have a Moose Hide campaign pin. So I'd like to talk about this just for a second. We have a Moose Hide campaign walk coming up here on May the 16th, 4:30, Bowring Park. We'd love for all of you to join us as business leaders, parts of the community. So this is all about, I guess it started out in Victoria. So it was a dad, and he said, how can I help? Because we're having parts of our community, missing women and Indigenous women and young girls go missing. So how can we help? So this was his first moose that he killed during the season, and he skinned it. And so to date, there's been some 5 million pieces of moose hide, also known as medicine. So this will create 5 conversations every time you wear it in your lapel, in your shirt, and have conversations about, like, how do we become better allies? I'm certainly on that journey with many communities, becoming that better ally. So I think this will help us. So wear it proudly. You can get it online, they're free, order it for your organizations, and it's something fabulous that we can all get behind. So hopefully you'll join us on that walk on May 16th.
So because we didn't want to focus on just us for this conversation, we're going to make it as interactive as possible. So we're going to be using Mentimeter today to kind of gauge questions and get people to interact. So before we dive into our presentation, if you want to scan the QR code, or you can go to mentimeter.com and enter the number code. We have a few slides that are going to gauge user activity and get you guys to be part of the presentation, so it's not just Steph and I talking, because as much as we love the sound of our own voices, we would love your input too from the rest of this. And the code is 85764867. Right, we'll give you all a few minutes. I'll read it out again. The code is 85764867. Read the code again? Oh, Mentimeter.
Oh, the words on the bottom are getting in line over here on the screen.
Okay, so Mentimeter is M-E, oh, move that. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
menti.com. How are folks doing with it?
Mentimeter.com. Yeah. Okay.
We all good?
Are we good? Can we get like a raise of hands just so we can gauge how we're doing? Okay.
Doing
Half
okay?
This side's good. Give it a second more for the other side of the room. All right. I think we're getting a general thumbs up. Okay. All right. Consensus says we can continue. Oh, no. Consensus says go back. Thank you. All good? All good. All righty. So we're going to start. And so the first question that we have is, when you think of disability, what images or words first come to mind? And that is going to be the first thing you can fill out on the Mentimeter. Oh, we have 41 responses already. So Steph, you want to go to the next slide? It's going to show us what people are thinking. And it says 0 there, but okay,
Whoa.
There we go. All right, so I have it on my phone so I can see. So the biggest words are the ones that people are saying the most often. And okay, we're getting barriers, wheelchair, barriers is a really big one. Invisibility, advocacy, physical. So this is great. So this shows us what we generally think when we're thinking about disability. And with that as a basis, we will go to our next slide. Okay, over to you.
So when Laura Bell and I got together, start talking about this, we thought about all the different ways that we have intersectionalities and what they look like. Because you often don't see a person's intersectionality, and we're going to break that down a little bit in a few minutes, but you don't always see. So we talked about a pass test. So can we pass in certain circumstances? What does that look like for us? How do we pass? What does even pass mean? Like, we know on tests, a pass means like fantastic, you probably got more than 50. Maybe you didn't get your A. But, what does a fail mean? So with this, we had a lot of conversations about, do we pass depending on the different workplaces and spaces that we're in and what that means to us?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when we were talking about it, where we talked about the first time we hit our first barrier in our intersectionality, the first time parts of ourselves became limiting aspects onto what we either thought we could achieve or what society said was achievable for us. And so for different people, depending on where your intersectionality is, your first pass or fail test might not be the first thing you categorize as for yourself. So for me, as I show up here, I'm a Black woman, which is the first thing people see. What people don't see is my queer identity and the other parts of myself. So for me, my first fail for society was my Blackness. So the other parts of me were put on hold, but that was the first thing society started judging me on when I started living in predominantly white spaces. So when I think about people with intersecting identities, so my queerness is not the thing that fails me in spaces. For me, it's my Blackness. For people with visible disabilities, for them, what is the first time they are told by the world, maybe not here, maybe not now, we'll try and get to you when we have time? And for those with non-visible disabilities, maybe they get into spaces where society is like, yes, you know what, you're all good, you're with the flow, and they're not able to vocalize, hey, there are parts of me you don't see that I have to hide, and I'm passing the societal test of I fit in, I'm considered average or normal, quote unquote, and then when they bring up the aspects of themselves where accommodations are needed, society then marks it, oh, you're no longer fitting the check mark of what is approved or normal in society, and you've now failed into spaces.
So for me, when we talked about it, as a young child, I was that tomboy, right? I remember getting a Barbie at age maybe 5 or 6, and I cried. I can't tell you how much I cried. I wanted G.I. Joe. I didn't want Barbie, right? I wanted the Transformers. I wanted the trucks. I wanted those things. So at a very young age, I came to understand that my gender was a barrier because I didn't maybe identify the way of all young people who are identified as little girls. I didn't really identify with maybe some of the toys, certainly didn't identify with the clothing or the page boy beautiful haircut my mother gave me that literally for years has, seen those pictures, like it's just like, oh my goodness, I need therapy just for those pictures of, because it wasn't me and that wasn't my identity. And I think getting to know the identity of young people and us as adults and seeing those barriers, and then certainly coming out at 31 and a half years old, that's late in life. But I didn't feel I had the safe space within my family, within my friend circle to be able to live my true authentic self. Thankfully, I have for a number of years now, and I'm so grateful, but we all have those barriers and intersectionalities that we need to get to know people, I think, on a different level when it comes to that. And what does that look like for folks when we put on more barriers of disability? What does that look like when we put on barriers potentially of religion or background or ethnicity, right? It becomes a real conversation.
So for those who've already gone to their Mentimeter, on the next slide, we asked, have you experienced your first marginalization pass or fail test? So we have the answers on here, but we'll give it a second to load on our screen. And we can see that as a community, for people, whether you are aware of their marginalizing identities, a majority of us have experienced this pass or fail test, where despite what we think we are capable of, we've walked into spaces and the spaces have been determined for us, whether or not we have earned a societal standard, earned space in those communities. And if we aren't thinking about that as intersecting identities in our accessibility plans we're talking about, we're not making sure that we're accessible to everyone. What barriers that are we not seeing for people's identities where they're set up for these pass or fails, which limit what they feel they can do or where they feel they can show up to?
I mean, I think all of us here today would agree that we're here to learn, we're here to explore, we're here to, for someone to correct us. I call those ouch moments. I have a lot of ouch moments. So if I make an ouch, I want someone to say, hey, Steph, and Kathy does this frequently with me, by the way. When I say, I have a great idea, she's like, that's not a great idea. It's like, okay, it's not a great idea. So but I want someone to call me on my not so great ideas, right? So I think it's great because, it's those ideas that come when you go for, a stroll, or you're with your pet, or you're in the shower singing, not so great. And it's just like, that was a great idea. It's like, no, it's not. But we need to be reminded sometimes that, we have so many different things going on. So getting to know people on their intersectional identities, what a great way of looking at it, a pass or fail test. We got to know each other on a more intimate level when we start talking about these things, breaking down our passes and fails. And I think it's a humbling experience if you can have the ability to look at your teams, your partners, people you work with, and have some of these uncomfortable conversations, because a lot of this is uncomfortable. It's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable of these conversations.
All right. If you want to continue. So with that, talking about intersectionality, we have to talk about where that word came from and how it's now commonplace when we talk about DEIB and all of that. So intersectionality was coined by social scientist Kimberly Crenshaw, and she has this wonderful graphic up there. It talks about the different levels and the different parts of our identity, and then proximity to power. So what parts of you don't exist in an isolatory way. So just because you're a woman, that does not mean that's the only thing about you that is valid. Just because you have your gender identity, the way you represent, your religion, accessibility, knowledge, socioeconomic standing, these are all things that deeply affect your way that you move through the world. So what you have access to, what you are able to avail of in terms of resources, services, and provisions as a whole, all aspects of your identity play a part in what is available to you. So when we're talking about, when they were talking about the standards and the acts, depending on someone's intersecting identity might also impact how they relate to these standards. So the fact that the standards were, when they were developed, had a broad range of individuals who were supposed to be part of the building of this process would have brought different voices, was saying, hey, we might be saying accessibility, but are we talking physical spaces? Are we talking about hidden disabilities? What does that mean based on people's intersecting identities?
And I guess another important part to look at is, as well, there's a lot of discriminations that happen in harassments and all these, negative things. So, and some of this depends on when we look at this fabulous, almost kaleidoscope of a picture, like race, ethnicity, gender identity, class, language, religion, ability, sexuality, mental health, age, education, body size, and many more. They all intersect. So it's what's our relationship with all of these? Like having a look at where do we land to? And there's also another wheel from Sylvia Duckworth called the Wheel of Power and Privilege. So it's what are our privileges and powers, and getting to understand what are our powers. I would love for this room to be filled with those who identify as males today, by the way, because I think a lot of us have had a lot of barriers and conversations around this. And I love when our male allies, those who identify as males, show up in the room, because we need to be having conversations. Why? Because 98% of our organizations are run by white cisgendered males. So I think a lot of us have had maybe some obstacles and barriers to overcome in our lives and careers. And I would love next time we have a forum like this that we bring on, you bring with you your best white male friend. So there's some more learnings that we can do. And hopefully we bring this back to our workplaces and spaces to carry on with some of this information.
So in continuing the conversation about intersecting identities, Steph and I were chatting, we're talking about like sometimes we have the double jeopardy, but depending on what your intersecting identities are, sometimes you get as far as a triple jeopardy. So we talked about the pass or fail, what are the aspects that limit you and marginalize you in those barriers to access? So when we talked about it, for me, I'm lucky when I think about my privileges, I sit at just a double jeopardy for me right now, because the only two things that I find limiting in my identity for me right now are my race and my gender. My race and my gender identity and all that. Those are my two barriers. But if we're talking about people with disabilities, they are sometimes posed with a triple jeopardy, depending on their intersecting identities. If you're racialized and you're part of the 2S community and you have a disability, the cards come, the minute you wake up, the cards stacked against you once you begin to leave your house are steep. They are hard, and then it's what part of you are you availing of resources for, what parts are easy to avail of resources for, and what parts do you have to say, this is hard, no one is going to help, the system is not set to support me, and I'm just going to have to let it go for right now. When we think about accessibility and meeting those needs and creating accessible spaces, are we meeting people at a single jeopardy? Are we meeting them at a double jeopardy? Or are we going far enough in our plans and our processes to handle the triple jeopardy that some people might be coming into our spaces with? And if we're not, what barriers do we have to work in within ourselves and our biases to ensure that we're creating a triple jeopardy free space so people can show up authentically, bring the value they inherently have into our workplaces and our community, and achieve what they think is possible for them, not what we as a society has deemed possible for them.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a heavy one, a big one when we start looking at people's identities. A lot of us here today, actually, every single one of us here today is covering something, right? Or masking something from our workmates, from people that we work with. And it's okay, because that's kind of a way of self-protection. Like it could be, how you grew up, where you grew up, family dynamics. It could be all sorts of things. But the thing is, we need to realize that some of us can't cover parts of ourselves. We can't cover our skin colors. We can't cover our queerness. We can't cover disabilities many times. So just looking at what this looks like for people on a daily basis.
So for those of you who are on Mentimeter and have already started filling out, the question that was posed was, when we think about accessibility, what does it include? So if you want to go to the next slide so people can see what responses we're getting. Oh, did we miss one? you go back? Okay, maybe it did not populate on our presentation, but what if you're looking at your phone? Some of the big words that we're seeing are, oh, whoa, tech is not, oh, perfect. So we're seeing equity, we're seeing inclusion, acceptance, but the one that's standing out the most is equity. And I like the word equity versus equality because it talks about giving people what they need to be where they want to be and not giving everyone the same, because we're not all showing up with the same aspects of marginalization. We're not all showing up with the same barriers. So equity is looking at the individual on a one-on-one basis and saying, where do you want to go? Not where have I deemed you can go. Where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? And what tools and resources do you personally need to get there? And attuning accessibility plans as we think about them to make sure that they are adaptable. It's not a one-size-fit-all for any of this work when we talk about the DEI space. Not everything works for everyone. We are not monoliths in our marginalized identities. So except making sure that when we're creating these plans and policies, we leave room for people to say, hey, I know you have this accessibility framework and you think it works as a grand overall, but here are my needs and here are where I need adaptations to this process that you've already deemed, signed, checked, and left. So I think it's important that when we look at these plans and begin to build them, we prioritize equity with what each individual in our space needs to be where they want to be.
And that goes back to a couple of the questions this morning is how best can I support you? Like ask. It's always the asking piece. Like it's very simple to ask. I know sometimes it might be awkward, but asking people what they need to show up to be the best selves. I mean, that's a very basic question that we can do. Language matters. Oh my goodness, does it ever? The language that we use every single day, right? Words have a tremendous amount of power. Who here likes the word guys? It's an infamous one. It's one of those contentious ones, but we use it a lot, right? Like we use guys, hey guys, good morning guys, what are you at guys? What's going on guys? Like it's one of those things, and maybe it's one of those endearments of Newfoundlanders, Labradorians, but like try looking at the language that we're using. Does everyone feel included if that language is used? Same thing as ladies. You know, there could be a room full of, most people might think we identify as ladies, but people mightn't. There might be, persons who are trans in the room, might be persons who are non-binary, might be persons who are queer, like whatever that is. So just looking at some of our vernacular that we're using on a daily basis of language, is it that person-centered language? What is it that resonates with folks? And I think it's okay for us to have conversations of, do you like that word? Isn't it ouch? Maybe some of you have kids, so, when you fall down, you create a scrape, that's an ouch. So maybe we should have ouch moments. It's like, ouch, and that word I don't quite like it, or, it doesn't feel good when we say those words. So looking at what language means to you and your teams and your workspaces.
Yep, and I think this is also incredibly applicable when we're talking about disability and accessibility, when we use person-first language or not. Each person decides for themselves how they want to be referred to. I know when we're talking about either people with autism or an autistic person, you can comfortably ask the person, how do you want me to refer to this about you? It's not for us to decide for a person what parts of their identity are represented first in communicating with them, to them, or about them. So making sure we leave room for conversation for people to vocalize when they want to, how to be addressed, how you speak about their disabilities, and what they want reference in their identities.
And the same if it goes to a person's pronouns. Like if a person says their pronouns are she and they, go with that. That person knows best. We need to look at that. I think Sherry had a great comment this morning about believe the person when they say it, and pronouns can change, right? The same thing as disabilities, they can change as well. So looking at all the continuum of what things might be or how things might happen.
So when Steph was putting together Steph and I were putting together the slideshow, she put this slide in there, and I was so excited when the slide came up because of the diversity represented in the slide, and the disabilities you can see, and the ones that might be invisible disabilities but are there. So when we think about disabilities, usually the image, depending on where you are and where you're from, of what someone with a disability looks like can be very triggering. But with this, you can show people who have mobility aids, you can see people of different religious and cultural backgrounds who people might not automatically assume might be people with disabilities. Typically, I can talk from my experience, when I've seen disability showcased, it's usually shown from usually a cisgendered white point of view. So you don't usually see people with racialized identities being represented as people who could be living with disabilities. And that is also very damaging, because if you don't see people who look like you, you feel like the odd one out, even for when you're trying to advocate for yourself and seek resources. So this slide was very touching to me, to see racialized individuals with disabilities, to see people who could either identify as male or female or trans, because there's one point we're going through and I was like picking out the parts. I was like, what can I see, what can't I see, and what am I implying about the individuals who are involved in this picture? So I really liked it when we're talking about knowing our biases and challenging what that looks like when we talk about disability as a whole and identity.
And just like a description of the picture, I mean, we have potentially a boardroom table, an office space, a whole bunch of different folks here. They're having a conversation. There's computers. There's a whole lot going on. And I mean, this could be any of our workplaces, and this should be our workplaces, actually. Our workplaces should be representative of our customers, our clients, of our population base, but it's not always. So looking at how our workspaces can look like this, and more importantly, getting to know our biases. We all have biases, every single one of us, and that's okay. Getting to know what our biases are, and that way if something clicks with you, when you see something like Laura Bell's fabulous pink shoes, you're like, awesome, right? Like, so it's like those things, when you see something, like, check it. Is it a negative thing? Like, check that. Where did that come from? Is it my religious background, which is okay, but like, you know, where did it come from? Like, you know, is it from television? Is it from, like, what is it? Politics? Like, just getting to know our biases. I think it's okay to say we have them. Where do they come from? Check ourselves. Because sometimes the biases, they're just maybe out of fear, maybe out of unknown, maybe out of a lack of understanding, lack of education. So just getting to know what our biases are, and I think that's the big conversation for us to look at.
So I really like the slide. I'm gonna tilt over so I can fully see it properly. So it's when we're talking about biases and things, is like, have you ever thought, as Newfoundlanders, we typically ask people where they're from. It's something since living here the last 10 years. If you usually meet someone who's like, oh, where are you from? And so do we believe them when they tell us where they're from? A lot of times people ask, no, where are you really from? Depending on if they think you're a racialized individual, meaning you can't possibly be from Newfoundland and Labrador, which is very challenging if you are, or statements like, I don't see color, which I think is, I'm just going to be very blunt, since you said the space that it is a safer space and a braver space. I hate that. I think being colorblind is one of the worst things an individual can be, because color is beautiful. I'm very proud to be a Black woman. I love my Blackness. There's no part of me that I would ever give up about being Black. So when someone says I don't see color, you don't see a part of me. And so when we think about people with disabilities, it's like, oh, I don't see you as having a disability. You then don't see the barriers that they have faced to get into the space to be with you. You don't see the resources that they might require to be able to perform to their optimal abilities of what they know they're capable of. So when we just say we don't see parts of an individual, we limit the aspects of themselves that can be celebrated, be valued, and all of that. And the other language is, do you even know what Snapchat or TikTok is? And I think that's very ageist, because why would my age limit what I know? I know a bunch of young people who don't deal with social media as a whole, and there is this wonderful older gentleman trending on TikTok who does like cool new outfits for like the new Gen Z, and I think it's the coolest thing ever. But we sometimes look at people and determine what they know, what they're capable of based on what we think, and that's challenging our own preconceived biases and notions about who people are based on our lived experience or our educational experience. Or generalizing, she's probably on her period. If you think a woman is acting irrationally, which I think is the biggest load of BS that has ever been on the face of the earth. Or when we talk about people with disabilities, be like, oh, at least you have a chair to sit on. That is, thank you for that. that is a load of crap, pardon my French. Or assuming that being part of the 2S LGBTQ community is just a phase. Thank you, Kathy, because these are parts of people that you are determining, one, if they have value, how much value they hold, and what they have to bring to society, community, and what parts of them you deem are wishy-washy and transitional. It is not for you to determine for an individual what parts of them are long-lasting and what parts of them are transitional aspects of their identity. I think we went back.
We go back?
Yeah, we went backwards. Oh, cool. Well, never mind. It showed up. The bubble.
Better late than never.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when we're talking about our word bubble and what we think of when we think about accessibility, once again, equity and inclusion being the biggest words, because that's what we're striving for. That is what we want to happen and what spaces we want spaces to look and feel like when we're talking about accessibility.
So I guess Pride Month is coming up in June, I guess, historically throughout the world, but July here in Newfoundland and Labrador, because that's, I think, our warmer season. That's what I'd like to think about it. So I think this is a great quote by Audre Lorde. You know, Audre Lorde is a self-proclaimed black feminist, lesbian, poet, mother, warrior, you know, passed in 1992. So I love this quote. So it's not our differences that divide us. It's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. So, you know, hopefully a symposium like this gets us talking about our differences, but I think we have so much more in common than our differences, and looking at how we celebrate this and how we have conversations around accessibility and disability. It's so important for all of us, as personally and certainly in our workplaces and spaces.
So because we like facts, because sometimes as humans we need grounding, objective, quantitative things to take back to our offices, we are going to share a little did you know? And Kathy, we're bringing you in on this because who else knows all the facts but you? Okay. Okay, we're going to go through this real fast.
Really quick.
Thank you for being our time tracker. Okay, if you want to go to the next. So while we were working on this, I also wanted to ensure that the facts we were bringing focused on an intersectional lens. So we didn't just talk about disability the way I have seen disability presented as a white representation only. So when we talk about this accessibility and healthcare, surveys conducted in Canada revealed that 2S LGBTQ individuals with disabilities and people of color are 3 times more likely to report difficulties accessing culturally competent healthcare. And so if you're trying to advocate for yourself, like Raven pointed out when she was asking the question about how do you support individuals who are migrants and immigrants who are with precarious status to making sure they have access to the resources, the facts are there. They are 3 times less likely to have the care that is relevant and culturally appropriate to support them to help them achieve their intended health goals and their own societal goals. When it comes to employment for individuals with intersecting identities and disabilities, 2S LGBT individuals with disabilities who are racialized are 4 times higher than the national average for individuals, so that the employment rate is 4 times higher. Imagine what that is like to know that you have something to give to the world, but because of these aspects of your identity, you are 4 times less likely to be employed, which means your ability to sustain yourself is less, which means your standard of living is incredibly diminished because you're not able to earn an income. What does that make someone feel like? What value do they then hold on themselves? And what value are we telling people who are at these intersecting identities that they bring into the world? And then when we talk about violence, because we can't talk about accessibility, disability, and intersecting identities without acknowledging there is a significant amount of violence faced by individuals. So individuals who are part of the 2S LGBT community, who have disabilities and are racialized, are 6 times, and let that sink in for a minute, 6 times more likely to be victims of violence compared to our non-queer, non-racialized counterparts with disabilities. And that's heavy, because as we advocate for accessibility within our workplaces and our community, what does it mean when we go out into spaces and we just physically are not safe? When we are targets of violence, both overt and sometimes accidental, because humans and things happen. If it's 6 times more likely that I am likely to face harm, why am I going out into spaces? And so, yeah. Sorry to leave with that heavy one, but Kathy, you as the wealth of knowledge, when we talk about what disability looks like in our province.
Yeah. So let's just talk about some statistics. Does anybody have any idea what percentage of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians that live in our province that identify as having barriers throughout the course of their day? 30%. 30% of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians experience some type of barrier. That's over 110,000 people. If we were to look specifically at women with disabilities, again, 30%. 1 in every 3 women who are in this room identify as having some type of a barrier. 1 in every 3. Canada-wide, we say that 27% of Canadians experience barriers. Do you want to know what that equals? 8 million Canadians. 8 million Canadians. So, you know, we are here. We are not going away. You know, and we need accessibility and we need accommodations.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I guess, you know, very impactful, our next slide is all about allyship. Allyship is really that action-oriented thing that we all have a part of being, you know, an ally to our disability community, or ally to our queer community, or ally to our racialized communities, our Indigenous communities, to really all communities. So it's how we learn and unlearn, how we reevaluate, how we look at redistributing power or the lack of power within workplaces and spaces. So if you ever thought, or if you ever heard of something that gets said, these are called racism interrupters or interrupters. So this arms you with things that you can say that will help you should something happen. So for instance, I'm uncomfortable with having that conversation right now, or, you know, that joke's not funny, or we don't say things like that here, or what you just said was harmful. These are certain things that you can say that will be helpful in shutting down conversations or in helping people learn sometimes the harm that they're doing in some of the conversations that are had. I don't know if we have time for the activity, do we?
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to, I think we should do this one. I'm not sure if you all have seen this one. There is an F-bomb in there, which I don't normally show in films, but I think this is such a great way to kind of end, is assume that I can.
Oh, volume. Ooh.
Oh, you don't serve me a margarita? Hey, bartender, you assume that I cannot drink a margarita. So you don't serve me a margarita? So I don't drink a margarita. Your assumption becomes reality. And parents, you assume that I cannot live on my own. So you don't encourage me to live on my own. So I don't live on my own. Coach, you assume that I cannot hit harder. So you don't train me to hit harder. So I don't hit harder. And teacher, you assume that I cannot learn Shakespeare. So you don't teach me Shakespeare.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
So I don't learn Shakespeare. E-I-E-I-O. But hey, if all your assumptions become reality, then assume that I can drink a margarita. You serve me a margarita. So I drink a margarita. Assume that I can live on my own. So I live on my own. Assume that I can hit harder. So I hit harder. Assume that I can learn Shakespeare. So, what fools these mortals be? I learned fucking Shakespeare. You assume I can't swear, right? Assume that I can do that job. That I can go to parties. That I can have sex. That I can be on stage. Assume that I can. So maybe I will. Teach me shit. Hey, bartender, you assume that...
There's no problem with that.
Can't help you there. I guess we'd like to end on this poem, because I think it gives a great emphasis to kind of the space that we're in today. So together we will create a brave space, because there's no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars. We all have caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voice that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. We will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be a brave space, and we will work together on it side by side. So by Mickey Scott Bay-Jones. And I think this is the invitation for the brave space and the space where we need to be.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephanie and Laura Bell. Really appreciated this. It's awesome. Great job. Great job. Okay, folks, now we have a coffee break, and I just wanted to give you the finals around the rest of our agenda. And just so that we don't lose people during coffee break, wanted you to know that not only did we provide the books today for our takeaway, but we also have a fabulous accessibility tool, which is a collection of resources that we're going to showcase immediately after our coffee break with a QR code, so you get to take it all home with you on your phone. And there it talks about digital accessibility and all those things, and Mandy's going to do an overview. So for now, let's enjoy our coffee break. I think there could be cookies and things back there.